This next one was an essay from 2016 about our hometown newspaper, the Washington Post. And it's the almost unbelievably hostile treatment that it meted out to the outsider presidential candidate Bernie Sanders in its op-ed page in the course of 2016. And I, for this essay, it was originally published in Harper's Magazine, I summarized that criticism of Sanders in great detail, and you can read it all right here. It's all here for eternity. And this is how the essay concludes after I've summarized the many, many, many ways that in which they've gone after Bernie Sanders. By the way, the ratio of stories attacking Sanders to stories supporting him was 5-1 in the period that I examined, which I just thought it was just shocking to me as a reader. I'd never seen anything like this before. Okay, so here I summarize all the stories, and then I write as follows. Think of all the grand ideas that flicker in the background of the stories I've just recounted. There is the admiration for consensus, the worship of pragmatism and bipartisanship, the contempt for populist outcry, the repeated equating of dissent with partisan disloyalty. And think of all the bad ideas that this pragmatism engendered. The cheers for the bank bailouts, the indignant refusal to question the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, the dismissal of single-payer health care as a preposterous, iridescent dream. And what I'm describing, of course, is the ideology of the professional class, of our sound-minded East Coast strivers, fresh out of Princeton, fresh out of Harvard, eagerly quoting as authorities their peers in the other professions, whether economists at MIT or analysts at Credit Suisse or political scientists at Brookings. This ideology constantly reassures us that the experts who head up our system of government have everything well under control. Above all, it is an insider's ideology, a way of thinking that comes from a place of economic security and that takes a view of the common people that is distinctly patrician. Now, here's the mystery. Why would journalists of all people buy into such an ideology? As a group, journalists aren't economically secure. I mean, newspapers are museum pieces today. I mean, every bit as much as Bernie Sanders' New Deal policies. The newsroom layoffs never end. Book review editors are so rare a species today that they may disappear completely unless somebody starts breeding them in captivity. The same thing goes for the journalists who once covered police departments and city halls. At some papers, opinion columnists are supposed to have day jobs elsewhere, and copy editors have basically gone the way of the great auk. This is an extinct bird, folks, the great auk. In other words, what I'm saying, no group knows the story of the dying middle class more intimately than do journalists. So why do the people at the very top of this profession identify themselves with the satisfied and the powerful? Why in the world would a person working in a moribund industry compose a salute to the Wall Street bailouts? And they did. This was part in their course of their war on Bernie Sanders. This is part of it. It's like he should never criticize the wall. No one should criticize the TARP, you know. Why would a columnist drop megatons of angry repudiation on Sanders for his, quote, outrageous negativity about the state of the country? I mean, for this country's journalists, that state is pretty goddamn negative, folks. Maybe it's something about journalism itself. I mean, this is a field, after all, that has embraced the forces that are killing it to a pathological degree. I mean, no institution has a greater appetite for trendy internet thinkers than journalism schools. We're all of us are desperately convincing ourselves that we need to become entrepreneurs, right? As newspapers die, it's every man for himself in the digital world. We're all going to become entrepreneurs. We're going to get ourselves somehow attuned to the digital future. The future that is, as it is described for us. Is this being filmed, by the way? So no cursing? Well, go ahead. Edit it out. All right, then we'll leave it out. By a transparent, a group of the digital future as it is described for us by a cast of transparent con artists, let's say. When a few years ago, the TV comedian John Oliver did a riff on the tragic decline of newspaper journalism, just about the only group in America that didn't think it was funny was, that's right, the Newspaper Association of America, which didn't think we ought to be nostalgic about the days when its members were successful. Truly, folks, we are like buffalo nuzzling the rifles of our hunters. Or maybe the answer is that the people at the top of the journalism hierarchy simply don't identify with their plummeting peers. Maybe the members of the DC Pundit Corps think they will never suffer the fate of the people who wrote for the Tampa Tribune. And maybe they're right. As the rising waters inundate the Fourth Estate, it is increasingly obvious that becoming an insider is the only way to hoist yourself above the deluge. And maybe this is one reason why the Washington Post attracted the fancy of mega-billionaire Jeff Bezos and why the Post seems to be thriving these days with a fancy new office building on K Street and a swelling cohort of young bloggers ravening to be the next George Will or the next Sidney Blumenthal. It remains, this institution remains, however precariously, the cradle of the punditocracy. Now, meanwhile, between journalism's insiders and journalism's outsiders, between the ones who are rising and the ones who are sinking, there is no solidarity at all. Here in the capital city, every pundit and every would-be pundit identifies upward, folks, always upward. We cling to our credentials and our professional class fantasies, hobnobbing with the senators and the governors, trading witticisms with friendly cabinet officials, helping ourselves to the champagne and the lobster at the reception. Everybody wants to know our opinion, we like to think, or to celebrate our birthday, or to find out where we went for cocktails last night after work. Until the day, that is, when you wake up and you learn that the tycoon behind your media concern has changed his mind, and everybody is laid off, and that it was never really about you in the first place. Gone the private office, the award-winning column, the cable news show, the checks start bouncing, the booker at MSNBC stops calling, and suddenly you find that you are a middle-aged maker of paragraphs, of useless things, dumped out into a billionaire's world that has no need for you, doesn't really give a damn about your degree in comparative literature from Brown. You start to think a little differently at that point about universal health care and tuition-free college and Wall Street bailouts. But of course, it's too late by then. Too late for all of us.